It's lovely. So I feel like this is a Geek Week presentation, but we're doing it in Craft Week. So Overtones, this is a new class for me. Karen keeps giving me assignments, and it's something I've always been interested in because I love barbershop and I sing tenor, so I feel like I'm the one who gets to experience the overtone the most in the chord, because often somebody in the quartet is generating a note that I'm singing and I can feel it when I'm singing, so it's really cool. And as an arranger, it's really important to understand how you're putting chords together, how they impact the overtones. But what I'm hoping we'll do tonight is I'm hoping you'll hear a couple of overtones, and then we're gonna dig in a little bit to the science of sound and talk about the Overtone series. So at the end of this, you should know what that is. And there's going to be some scary things in a couple of the videos I show you, like science words and stuff like that. Just hang in past that part, because there's cool stuff too that you're going to follow. Sometimes I listen to the science things and I'm just like, ugh. I just want to know why it rings. So we're going to try and focus on those things. And if you're really interested in the science, there's a bunch of resources at the end of this, and you can go very deep into rabbit holes on YouTube with all the geeky glory of the Overtone series. So hopefully that's the class you're here to see. Though we talk a lot about overtones in barbershop, we use a bunch of different words to talk about them. We talk about ring, a chord that buzzes. We talk about expanded sound. You hear screaming overtones, and I know they can be hard to hear sometimes unless they're really clear, especially in women's voices, because we sing in higher registers. But every musical sound we make has overtones associated with it. So what we try to do in barbershop is bring them out, because what we get when we feel them is goosebumps and hair standing up on our arms and shivers and excitement. I remember being in Brava in the middle 5 years. I was in the Brava Quartet. They eventually won international, and Elaine Cotton is the baritone of Brava, and she has 4 girls. One of them, the second one, was only 2 years old when we were singing, and we were singing Toot Toot Tootsie, and we rang the tag while Cheryl was sitting on the couch, a little 2-year-old. And this little 2-year-old felt the ring in that tag because it was so compelling. Her whole body went, ah, like that. Like she stuck her little legs out, she stuck her little hands up, and she screamed at the end. And we were like, that's what an overtone does to people. You know, a 2-year-old's not going to mask it at all. It was hilarious. And she is a really good singer now. She's 24, something like that, 25. That's a long time ago.
Love it. Love it.
I know, but it's so fun to see that visceral reaction to it. So we know what that feels like when we hear it. So we're going to talk about what they are, why we love them in barbershop, and how do we make them happen. And this is, again, a first run at this class, so your feedback to help improve it at the end will be very helpful and organize it. So I want to look at a couple of examples. Kathleen Hansen's been doing a lot of really great videos, and she did during the pandemic. There's been a lot of really great education coming out of this everybody stay at home and don't sing together period of our lives, which I hope is the only period like this we ever experience. So she did a really good overview of overtones, but what she did that was really fun in this video, so I put this in the resources at the end, is she pulled out a couple of examples, and I'm going to play one of them, the first one that she does, that have literally a screaming overtone at the end. So this is a men's quartet, and I'll let her set it up, and you'll get to hear it twice. And listen for the note that she points out. It's above the chord and nobody is singing it.
Provide me with some examples, and here are some that were posted. In this first example, the Vagrants, we will hear a very short but very loud overtone. But what we're listening for is this tone. No one is singing that note. Here it is again.
Did you hear that?
Clearly the crowd loved it.
I can't even sing it right now, but so high, nobody is singing it. The overtone series, the overlapping overtones in the notes that they are singing are creating that fifth voice, and maybe a sixth and a seventh. Sometimes you can hear multiple overtones above a chord. It's really cool. Other times overtones show up not, well, here's I'm going to use my own quartet because I know on our CDs where I think, wow, listen to that overtone. So we're just going to listen to a couple of those. This one is the end of the Santa Claus medley. I wouldn't say, I think it's Aaron Dale's arrangement. And it ends on a triad. Shannon slides from this A down to this C. And when she gets there, you'll hear a high C pop into the chord. So you'll hear that note. So singing in B flat. Here we go. Nobody's singing that note. Can you hear that? So it happens when Shannon arrives, because now there's this synergy between these, the baritone and the bass note, and then you hear the whoop creep into the chord. Listen again. Chords that are ringing sound shiny. They sound shiny. They sound shimmery. And this here's an example from our ballad that we competed with called Glockamora. How Are Things at Glockamora? It's a wonderful Clay Hine arrangement. And there's a place at the peak, just after the peak, where how are things in Glockamora? And Shannon and Michelle, the lead and the bass, they lock an octave. And if you listen to Michelle's line, the lead, how are things in Glockamora this day? On the word day, she will disappear into Shannon's overtone. So you'll get the shimmery effect where you can't really hear Michelle alone. It sounds like she's a little chorus all of a sudden on top of Shannon's notes. Just listen to that. Listen for the word day and listen to the shimmer in it. But she's not there until it switches. And it helps when you crank your sound a little bit. Just try one more time. So there becomes like a kind of a shimmer, a shine. It's really a cool thing in barbershop, and we do it on purpose in barbershop. We arrange the art form so that this happens. So it's kind of a cool feature. So I want to talk about a few definitions about that we're going to use. We're going to use these terms as we go through. So the first one is the fundamental. The fundamental is the thing that you're singing. So the fundamental is the note at the bottom of the overtone series. So in Shannon's case, day, that was the fundamental. So that's easy. We're going to use the word fundamental instead of note when we're talking about the series. An overtone is a sound, a harmonic that is heard above the fundamental note. That's always there. It's the same no matter what note you sing. The relationship is the same. It's in all musical sounds. So if Shannon's singing day, her first overtone is day, the octave, and then there's a series that goes up above. We're going to look at that in a second as well. So we hear the overtones as part of the fundamental. Usually we just hear it as part of the sound, but sometimes we can pop them out of the sound, and we'll look at that too towards the end. It's kind of fun. So this is what an overtone series looks like. You can picture, here's the fundamental down here. That's the note that's being sung. And then these are the series of harmonics or pitches that appear above that note as part of that note. And we also call those harmonics. We call all of those harmonics, the fundamental and the overtones. They're all called harmonics. So any part of that harmonic series. So We may use any of those words in this presentation. So there you go. I'm just going to pop over to this guy, and he uses the scary words, the science words, but he's going to talk a little bit about the Overtone series. And we'll let other people do my talking for me.
In this series that we call the harmonic series or the overtone series, we call that bottom note the fundamental, or the first partial. That fundamental will have a particular frequency. For example, this A has a frequency of 55 Hz. This fundamental frequency is important because the harmonic series is an additive series, not an exponential one, which means that we find each additional partial by adding the fundamental frequency. So the second partial will be 55 from the fundamental frequency plus 55 to give us 110 Hz, which gives us the A an octave above, because the octave is a 2-to-1 ratio. From there we can keep adding 55 Hz to the previous partial to get the rest of the notes in the series. In theory, this series goes on into infinity. I'm going to stop at 16. It's also important to know that each partial above the fundamental is significantly quieter than the fundamental. However, the lower the fundamental, the more audible are the overtones. This is what gives low notes their rich quality, because they are being reinforced by those overtones. This has been the aharmonic series that I've been showing you. Each fundamental frequency has its own. Another interesting property of the harmonic series is that as you go up, the intervals get closer and closer together. You'll notice that the first two are an octave apart, and then a perfect fifth, and then a perfect fourth, and then a major third, and then a minor third, and then so on. You'll notice that the perfect fifth shows up very early in the Overtone series, suggesting a strong relationship between tonic and dominant, which is the basis of our tonal system. You'll also notice that the first 3 unique notes in any given harmonic series create a major chord. There's even a theory that suggests that the reason that so much of our music is based on major chords is because it's embedded into the harmonic series. But I'll let everyone debate that in the comments.
As far as we're going to go.
Because the harmonic
we
series
can debate
is
that in the comments. So he says a couple of things that I like. First of all, he's introduced the harmonic series to you. And this is what it looks like. And we'll do a couple of examples. So the first, and basically he's adding 55 to each of these frequencies. So when he said exponential and la la la, I thought, oh, la 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 la. But after I looked at it, I thought, oh, they're just adding. And so as they get faster, the ratio of the, say, the first overtone is 2-to-1 to the first one. 110 is the frequency, and that's an octave higher than the first note. And then it goes another fifth because it adds another third. You get 3-to-2, and then it adds another 55, and you get to the second octave. So there's a pattern that is consistent no matter what note you're singing. Those are the frequencies that are being generated above that fundamental. The other thing I like that he said that's important in barbershop, because this is part of our sound category approach to our sound, the approach to our sound, I should say. The lower the fundamental, the lower this note that starts the overtone series, the more audible the overtone series. So that's where the guys have a bit of an advantage on us because they sing lower than we do. But this is also why we are it's important that we give the bass a strong chord component because that's the lowest note in our chord. And it's also important that we balance our sound in that barbershop cone we talk about in the sound category, because we want those lower notes to also be louder, because these partials, these overtones are a lot quieter than the fundamental, and they get quieter and quieter as they get higher. So we need to reinforce them in order to get that ring that we like. So this is what an overtone series looks like. This is what he just described. So if we use the example of C, the fundamental is C, the first overtone is going to be the next C in the octave. If that's the first one, the next one is an octave above. So if anybody's singing that note above you, you're already reinforcing their note in the chord. And we have that a lot. We double roots a lot, for example, so that we have an octave in a chord. The next one is the fifth, the G above. And this, when he said something about tonic to dominant relationship, if you're not a music theory person, if C is the tonic, the dominant is the fifth note in the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we do a lot of cadencing in barbershop from tonic to dominant, right? We do a lot of that. So that relationship is really important in Western music. And there's another presenter we'll listen to later, and he'll just say, you know, it's not random that Western music, or that we use these kinds of chords in our music, because they're in the science of the music, if you will. So if we go to the next overtone, so the third one was the G, the next one is the C again, the next octave. So we've got, those are the frequencies we're hearing above that fundamental. The next one is the major third. So now we've got, and you must recognize that chord. That's the lead, tenor, bari, bass. You know, as a director, I used to always be saying lead, tenor, bari, bass. We're going to start there, right? That's that chord right there, the major triad chord in the Overtone series. If we keep going, what's really cool is you get the G above. Oh, 1, 2, dot, dot, dot. There's the major triad again. And then we do a minor third above that. We wind up with do you recognize that? Hello, 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 hello. That is the barbershop 7 right there in the overtone pattern. So that's really cool too. And that's why we treat those major triad chords as strong barbershop chords. When we talk about strong chords, that's partly why. So with a fundamental of C, that's how it goes. If you did a fundamental of G, what have we got? We've got G on the bottom. The first overtone is the octave. The second overtone is the fifth above. So we've got, oh, it's very exciting, isn't it? I know. I like it. D, then we got the next octave. We've got a bunch of G's and D's. In that one note that we're singing, all these sounds are happening. Then we've got the third. We've got the D. So we've got, there's a G chord up there above the sound of that one note. Then there's the seventh. And the next one is the G. And like he said, they go on into infinity. But really, we're lucky to hear the first one at the pitches that we sing. In a chorus, you'll often hear the fifth above. In a pitch up or a tune up, if you're on an individual note, we can often make that happen, or an octave. So you'll hear probably only the first and the second one most of the time reinforced, but sometimes in lower ones you'll hear a lot more. And in overtone singers, if you've ever listened to overtone singers, hopefully we'll get a chance to listen to one at the end here. That'll kind of blow your mind too. Something to aspire to. So
we have many comments. Do you want?
Oh, good. Good. People are awake.
Oh, yes. No. Well, when your wonderful quartet sang the end of the Santa Claus medley, Amy Fagan's cat was startled. My cat just was startled, woke him right up. And then Kathy from FEC is saying, is all this in English? And Betsy is saying it's math. And then Tracy from Cranberry Shores would like to know where the 55 came from.
Oh, it's the frequency of the fundamental. It was the A is a 55. It's like when you're tuning up an orchestra and they talk about A4, is it A220, A440? That note. Yeah. All the pitches have a frequency. So it's
and Sue from the Pride of Kentucky, so glad you're here. Assuming the same interval would be true for the undertone?
Yeah, the undertones go in the other direction. Yeah. And I don't think they're the same exactly. I did watch a little bit about that last night, but I've never really studied the undertones. But yeah, those are cool too. Those are the rumbles you hear under the chord. And if you watch Kathleen's video at the end, she does Main Street doing an undertone, Tony's quartet.
And Sue Martin says that 55 is the actual frequency of that frequency of that low A. And Melissa says perhaps from an oscilloscope where 55 came from for A, and 55 equals how fast the vibrations oscillate. That's what Ray Johnson said. And undertones.
That's right. See, so she got all the answers in the chat.
And Ray also says undertones are actually auditory illusions, like an optical illusion.
I don't know that there's an overtone singer at the back of this too. I included her video because it was so interesting, but it was very technical. And she talked about how to generate the undertones in her voice. So yeah, like I said, I don't have any education in undertones. I just know that you experience them sometimes near that rumble underneath. And we hear them in our voices as well. I've heard them in our quartets too.
And Sue Martin comments, if you had a different note as a fundamental, it would start with a different frequency, and then that different number would be added to the overtones.
Exactly, yeah.
And
look at all of us geeking out.
And
it's awesome.
Do the barbershop 7th, we heard that. And Margaret Jackins asks, why is the F in parentheses?
I don't know. I just stole that off of a thing. Why is it in parentheses? I don't know. No idea.
Okay.
I didn't draw it. If I drew it, I would not put it in parentheses.
And Kathy says,
is it because it's the 7th? See how the 7 is in parentheses also?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yep.
I see.
Maybe he was. I don't know. I literally stole it instead of creating it. So there.
And Kathy says apple blossom time. And Diane Kelly says, so I think it'd be difficult for women's voices to make overtones because it's of the range in which we sing.
It's important that it be arranged properly. It's important that the bass be a volume, the volume relationship be good. We do ring. We ring a lot, but you hear the audible overtones are easier to create with lower fundamentals.
Mm-hmm. That's it for the comments. Thank you.
All right, good. Okay, so why are we so crazy about overtones? Well, this is from the music category, just how we describe the art form. It's unaccompanied, interesting melody, general audience, popular song form. The harmonizations consisting primarily of the strong chords that we like, but this is the big one here. Voices strengthen the lock and ring characteristic of the barbershop style. It's written right into the style, how we define the style. And what happens when we've just looked at one note and all of the notes that it generates, what happens when we start sounding as chords and every note in that chord is generating its own overtone series? Now this is where it starts to get interesting, right? Although, it's still going to be a bit of a slog. So here we go. We're going to listen to Andrew Wang talk about overtones because I think he's really quite entertaining. Let me see. You're not the guy I want. I want you to go away, my screen thing.
While you're finding that, Sue Martin comments that everyone rings all the time. You just are not necessarily aware of it.
Every musical sound creates this pattern. It's never not there. Yeah. Okay, this is Andrew Wang. He's going to talk a little bit about the Overtone series.
Instrument. But the second mind-blowing thing about the harmonic series is that it's the foundation of all the chords and scales that we use. It's the reason why certain notes sound good together. It wasn't just that someone back in the day decided on a scale that they liked and we all agreed to it and are using it out of habit. It's that the physical laws of the universe determined what these note relationships would be. Long before music existed, long before humans even existed, any resonant body vibrating at a consistent frequency would also include harmonics, would include those integer multiples of that bass frequency. Let's have a listen to the series again. As you can hear and see in this notation, the pitches of the harmonic series correspond with the notes and intervals used in the vast majority of music. If this low C is our fundamental, then the first overtone, the vibration that's twice as fast as that, is this C an octave up. And then the vibration that's 3 times as fast as that. 4 times there's C, 5 and E, and so up by an octave, we're going up by a fifth. From there, up by a fourth, then a major third, a minor third, another minor third, and then switching clefs here, we go up a major second, major second, major second. So for instance, if we play a C, look at how many C overtones we have. If we play an E with a C, well, there's a bunch of E's in the Overtone series on C. And then in the Overtone series on E, there's gonna be all those E octaves. So you've got a lot of alignment that sounds good to us. And sound good together is doing math. An octave is 2 notes vibrating at a 2-to-1 ratio. The next simplest whole number ratio is a perfect fifth, 3-to-2. A perfect fourth is a 4-to-3 ratio. Notes sound consonant. They sound nicely harmonized to us when the math is the easiest. Not only that, but when 2 notes related by this series are played together, they will share a lot of overlapping overtones. Now there is just one little wrench to throw in the equation. Let's get this diagram back up.
Yeah,
You see these numbers across the top?
I couldn't remember where I should stop them, but that's where I stop them because I'm not teaching a P theory class, but that's in here too.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Isn't it awesome? Okay, so that's the thing that Andrew says that's so important to us in barbershop is these overlapping overtones. There are a lot of overlapping overtones in the major triad chord, for example, and that sounds good to us. So what we do when we arrange barbershop chords is we try to arrange them such that we're maximizing the overlap between the parts. So I'm going to break down an example. There we go. Okay, let me just say this again first. The overlapping overtones, that major triad chord that we hear in the Overtone series, is why we refer to certain chords in the music category as primary. So we talk about the big 3, and they are the major triad, they are the dominant 7, and the dominant 9, usually with the root out. And all of those chords appear in the Overtone series. So what that means is when we arrange those chords, we're going to be able to have a lot of this overlap we're looking for, and that's going to help these chords ring. We have overlap in other chords too, in the secondary chords. It's just not as predominant. It's not as easy to achieve, maybe. So because they're built on the major triad, there's lots of Overtone series overlap. And the lower the fundamental, the more audible the overtone. So this is important because we've got to put the bass on a note where the singers above are going to be in her Overtone series, if we can. And not every singer will be in that. That gets into balance, but that's a whole nother topic too. So the bass needs to be on a strong chord component. All right, so I want to go back to this Santa Claus example and why that overtone happens at the end of it. And this is hard. I'm sure there must be a simpler way for me to present this, but you guys will be the judge of that. So let's listen to it one more time. This is the one where you should be able to hear that high B flat right at the end. And then we're going to talk about it. Well, it's B flat because we sing it down whole tone, but here we go. Whoops, go back. Shannon, you're not out there yet. I can hear that B flat coming in even before Shannon gets there. So DN, and I must be generating it, but let's see. So this is Shannon's fundamental. Shannon is the bass. Sorry, the members, my friends in Martini. So Shannon is the bass, and this is where her fundamental lands. In women's barbershop, we write, just so that the chords aren't all crunched up on the treble clef, we write the bass clef an octave lower. So her pitch is actually a middle C. And so that's why I've just shown everything on the treble clef here for simplicity. So if she's singing a middle C, her first overtone is the C above it, right? And then she'll have a G in her overtone pattern, another C, and then that barbershop 7, E, G, B flat, and another C, and then we're not going to hear all these guys. I should have just excluded them. So what's interesting though is, and the reason it starts to ring when she gets to that C and locks it with Deanne, the baritone, is that this is Deanne's fundamental. This is Deanne's fundamental, and this is Shannon's fundamental. Shannon's first overtone is Deanne's fundamental, Deanne's note, right? So Shannon's first overtone is Deanne's note. And you can also see that Shannon and Deanne share a bunch of things in the overtone pattern because basically they're an octave apart. So Deanne's overtone series is Shannon's series, just an octave up. So all of these lines are shared, overlapping. And what overlaps gets reinforced. This is the note you're hearing in the chord. This is the note that you're hearing. This one's probably too high to hear. So we're not really hearing that one, but it's being reinforced as well. It might be part of that kind of shimmer, but we don't really hear it as a note, but we can hear this one. The other one that's being reinforced and why you can often hear the fifth is this one. But it's probably more part of the shimmer too, because it's quite high, like getting way up there. Okay, so that's the bass and the baritone. When we throw the tenor note in there, she's on the G, and that note is actually in Shannon's overtone series as well. So my fundamental is in Shannon's overtone series. And this is what I talk about when I say singing with ghosts. You know, I'm sure that Deanne at the end of that chord can feel Shannon on her note. And I'm sure that I have the same sensation. You know, it's not as strong an overtone. It's going to be a lot quieter than this one, but still, she's reinforcing my note. That's creating that shimmer. If I put, and you can actually see that Deanne and I are reinforcing each other a little bit too. So this is that strong relationship between the 1, the C, and the G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 1 and the 5. So 1 and the 5 is a really nice reinforcing interval. The 3 doesn't share as much in terms of like Michelle's fundamental. She's on the E, so it's unusual, not unusual, but often the tenor's on the 3rd, not the lead. But her fundamental is not really being reinforced in Shannon's overtone pattern. She's got this high one. They share an overtone. Her first overtone is in Shannon's pattern, but that's getting pretty high. So this is often why, you know, how we talk about being high and light on the 3rd, you know, just laying off a little bit. It's not sitting easily in this pattern. It's a quiet overtone. So it needs to be a lighter balance. It's not being reinforced as much as the 5th and the octave by the other pieces. But this overlapping overtones, this is why we want to have the bass on a part of the chord where she's going to be reinforcing everything above her. And that's what happens, that's what creates that ring. If we look at another example, this is the Glockamora example. Oh, actually, well, you could listen to that one. We could listen to this one more time. This is the note, this one here that I'm pointing at. This is the note that's being reinforced. If you imagine the 5th, you might be able to hear it, but sometimes I don't know if I'm imagining it or hearing it. It's so high. It'd be easier, yeah, to listen to guys. But you know, we aren't guys, so we're going to listen to us. Okay, so here's the other one, and you could probably guess why Michelle's note disappears into Shannon's note. Why does that happen? What's Shannon's first overtone on the word day?
The octave.
It's the octave, yeah. So this is Shannon's note, and this is Michelle's note. And Shannon is creating such a strong overtone that Michelle's smart enough to sing open and free, and allow that and share resonance with that first overtone. So that's where she's disappearing. She's disappearing into that sound that Shannon is making. And I can hear that it's not as easy to hear on this sound system right now, but it's really amazing to me that Michelle just disappears into Shannon's overtone. So that's a goal as a bass singer. That happens for a lot of different reasons, but that overtone accompaniment on Michelle's note is what makes that lead note shimmer. And it also requires, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it requires that we have a common approach to the vocal production and that the vowel will be matched. And there's a bunch of other things that can be a barrier to allowing that ring to happen. A tenor that sings too harsh or too hard or too closed, you're not going to be able to enjoy those overtones visiting you on those notes. You really want to welcome them in and share the space with them so that they can ring. So there's a couple of examples. Does that make sense? Like why barbershop chords ring? Are there any questions, Annette, or chat, or? Okay, we'll go on then. So how do we bring the ring then?
People can unmute themselves, but there weren't any questions, so.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So
I have a question, Corinna. Sure. When you arrange a song, do you have to be thinking about all of this?
Yeah. Okay. So when we arrange, if you came to my arranging 101 at Geek Week, we talked about, where you put the bass really matters. So if I look back here, one thing we always try to do, so the root of a chord, the name of a chord, this is a C chord. So we always try to put basses on the root if we can. And if we can't, we'll put them on the fifth sometimes, but we almost never want to put them on the third or the seventh. And if you look at this picture, if I put the bass on the root, and I've got a 1, a 3, and a 5 in my chord, and I put the bass on the root, you can see that she's reinforcing whoever's on the other 1 and whoever's on the 5. Even if you had to double the 5, that is also a second choice, right? So we want the bass on a chord component that's going to reinforce the ring. What if I put the bass on the third? We never put the bass on the third, pretty much. And the reason is the Overtone series. Do you see that? Because if the lead is on, or if the bass was on E, her Overtone series has got E, E, B, D, F sharp, A. And the only note that is shared across are these E's, but that you can see how the E's appear in the higher series. They're not going to be as audible. And none of the fundamentals are shared in that series. So that's going to inhibit the ring.
Margaret Jackins is asking, the examples that you've shown have the bass fairly high. Would there be more opportunity to ring if she were lower?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, that's because I did the class this week. I'm going to spend more time looking for more examples, but yeah, definitely.
And Pat asks, are the overtones actual vibrations that our ear hears?
They are, I guess. They are reflections of the fundamentals. So they are actual frequencies that occur in nature. Anybody else know? They are just there. They're just
absolutely.
there with musical sounds. Yeah.
Absolutely, they're sounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
The trouble with overtone frequencies is sometimes they're vibrating at such a high intensity, that at such a high pitch, that they're difficult to access. If you think about how high some of those notes are, they're above a threshold that is easily audible to most people. So if you
Yeah.
think about the testing we do when you're hearing in a booth with those earphones and it's really quiet, some of those really high pitches are very, very high, and they're up there in the Overtone series. So we're thinking something around 4,000, 5,000, 8,000 hertz versus 55, which is the number we were talking about much earlier. So it's much, much, much higher and much more difficult to hear. But yeah, they're there, they're vibrating, but your dog would be able to hear them for sure.
Yeah, dog whistles. And there's some comments in the Andrew Wang video about, hey, my cat totally sat up for this sort of thing. Like the animals are hearing more of the Overtone series than when he's emphasizing them. Yeah, that's why we do tend to, like, I think you, in the bass, you probably look at these first 4. Yeah, I mean, we really won't hear these, but the more they're reinforced, the more of that shimmer you'll be aware of. And you will, this is the most common one to hear is the octave. And then sometimes the 5th if you're lucky.
Margaret said, I had a roommate who had birds and they would go ballistic when certain chords would ring. And you said, Michelle, let the bass note produce overtones. What should us harmony parts do to let the overtones happen?
Sing with free vocal production for sure. Like sing with open resonant sound. Get rid of tension from your instrument. Yeah, you need to share that resonant space with the other singers. The more common your approach to vocal production, the more you're going to ring. You also have to sing in tune. You also have to match vowels. Like there's a lot, but the vocal production, just that all kind of goes into that piece. And actually, that's what this slide is about. These are all the things we need to do. You know, have a strong chord, have it properly voiced, tune it accurately. And you've all probably encountered P theory if you've been around barbershop for any period of time, but just intonation or tuning, not like the piano, but like science tuning, to do science tuning to get that ring to happen. The appropriate volume relationships, so you're reinforcing the parts of the chord that are sharing overtone series, overlapping overtone series. And then that shared resonance, really important. So that's just keep working on your instrument, getting rid of tension, allowing things to be free and floating and ringing, and then matched vowels, all those things.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah. Any change in that will inhibit the overtones. And we actually use that day thing in Glockamora in a class that we teach called Part Smart, where we have Michelle crush her sound a little bit, just introduce some tension to kill that synergy, and it's very sad. But that's all she has to do is to kind of crush Shannon's overtone by refusing to sing with it in a way, and it just sounds like 2 people singing 2 notes instead of the magic of that synergy that it creates. Okay, I'm done.
And Ray Johnson comments that all overtones exist on any single pitch, but different partials are reinforced and muted. And this is how you can tell one person's voice from another, or one instrument from another.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The rabbit hole you can go down, like listening to, and the software that people have to eliminate some of those partials to kind of take the characteristic out of, I don't know, a trumpet, what makes a trumpet sound like a trumpet, you know, and they'll muck around with it until it doesn't sound like itself anymore by just taking out pieces of that series. And there's a lot. If you're interested in this, there's a lot of YouTube, like laying in bed looking at stuff like this. Here's a really cool video, and you're probably familiar with the Pentatonics. And if you've ever seen them in concert, then you've seen Abbie Kaplan do this. I remember Tom Metzger doing this a long time ago. Blowing my mind just at a Harmony Hollow somewhere. He was doing taps, but Abbie Kaplan is singing "The Lion Sleeps Tonight" by accessing that overtone pattern by changing the shape of his mouth. He's singing a fundamental, but you will hear above it, "The Lion Sleeps Tonight." So just watch this and be awed. mind blowing? I mean, they're there.
Oh my God.
They're there. They are in everything we do. So it's just bringing them out, figuring out how to bring them out, right? All
A
of these
whistle.
things. It sounded like somebody was whistling, but that's just him manipulating the sound. Yeah. So cool. So cool. And then this idea of volume relationships that's on this. I just sort of created this little bit because we really do want, the voice that's the most audible. What Margaret said too about, if you've got a nice a lower bass note, you're going to have more audible overtones in that as well. Yeah, so that is, I think, all that I wanted to really talk about. Like, overtones are really cool. They're generated by the fundamental, the note you sing, and every note you sing. I remember traveling in a car with Lynn Gerard. She's the lead of Brava. A long time ago, back when that little girl was 2. And she's very good at this. And she had a thing she would do, kind of like that Abby Kaplan thing, in the car, though, in an enclosed space, like in a bathroom, in some place that rings a staircase or something. You should try it. Just try making like a W sound. And I was trying to do it today and I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, okay, I've forgotten how. But if you do this sort of I can hear that sound in my sound. Like just play with it. You just try to focus the sound, make some weird sounds, and see if you can hear your own overtones. Because these people, there's a woman at the back of this deck who is an overtone singer, and you can watch that video at your own leisure and blow your mind. But if you get into a nice ringy space, it's going to reflect or amplify some of those harmonics, and you might be able to hear it in your own voice as well. I used to lay on the couch just entertaining myself doing that, and I had a black cat who would come running every single time. She would walk right up on my chest and look in my mouth like, what are you doing? I thought she was so cute. She was a good overtone listener. You would come running if the quartet was singing particularly well too, whatever quartet I was in. So barbershop music is arranged. So overtones are there. They exist. They're real. They're always there. Barbershop music is arranged to promote it, and we need to do these things if we want to hear more of them.
And the Amy Kaplan clip is in the chat to hear that again and again and again. It was wonderful.
I know, and you'll find lots. So this Anna Maria Hefede, polyphonic overtone singing explained visually. She's got a pretty good presentation on what Abby was doing. I've linked Kathleen's and Andrew's and some of the other things here as well. So yeah, so I'll put these, Patty will put them up on the site anyway, so you'll have those as resources. But that's it. That's my